Hello, and thank you for stopping by the Massachusetts first ever whiskey reviews here on YouTube. I am Thomas Metal 75, and this is my first whiskey review. And it does this time, I'm still keeping this one within the theme of beers and craft beer in general. As you can tell from the video title, this is going to be on the Jameson Caskmates, I should say. It's an Irish whiskey. I think everybody around the globe has probably heard of the Jameson whiskeys. They started in 1780 in Cork, Ireland, and the whiskey is produced by, the Jameson whiskeys are produced by Irish distillers, which are, I'm looking online here, which are called the Pernod Richard. That's the man that does this, I guess. John Jameson and Sons Limited. Triple distilled, matured, and bottled in Ireland. The Bow Distillery, Dublin 7, Ireland. This is, like the original Jameson, is a 40% alcohol by volume whiskey, and they say on the back of the bottle, we've been distilling Jameson since 1780, but we're always open to new ideas. So when a local craft brewer borrowed our cask to age their fine Irish stout, it gave us an idea. Why not finish our own precious liquid in stout seasoned oak barrels? The result is Jameson Caskmates, a special edition whiskey that accentuates the trademark smoothness of the original Jameson with additional flavors of coffee, cocoa, and a gentle hint of hops. And it's a gentle hint from my past experiences with it. So the thing that makes Irish whiskey unique from a lot of other whiskeys, which consist of Scotch whiskeys from Scotland, bourbons from America, Tennessee whiskeys, Canadian whiskeys, even stuff that's coming out of the Far East these days, is that Irish whiskey, most of them are pot stilled whiskeys, which mean that they are literally they're manufactured and they're distilled within a giant copper pot, basically, and they're usually distilled 3 times, whereas in a Scotch whiskey, as far as I understand, is only done twice. And I think the distillation of the Irish whiskey 3 times is primarily designed around it being an easier beverage to consume, because whiskeys and a lot of alcohols and spirits can be sort of harsh, and whiskeys, if you distill them like an Irish, or even a Canadians, are pretty easy to drink, then they become a little bit more palatable and not so hot in the mouthfeel. But any other information I can give you about the Jameson Caskmates? This started on, according to the Jameson Whiskey website, this was started from a conversation between the head distiller of Jameson and the head brewer of Cork's Franciscan Well Brewery. So they must make that stout that this comes from. Now, I'm going to use one of these kind of craft beer style glasses, but you can almost use any sort of style of glass that has a little bit of a nose section to put your nose in to concentrate the scent. And you could even use a tasting glass from a brewery to do it that way. And I do have some ice cubes in here. I'd like to give you the opinion of a straight whiskey, which is just the whiskey without any water. You could add water to it. I like to add some ice because I'm crazy, I like a colder beverage, but I'm going to review it in the glass without any ice, and then I'm going to add the ice. Now, what an ice is going to do is obviously it's going to chill down your whiskey, and it does lower the proof somewhat, but it's going to, like with water, it's going to open up the compounds of the whiskey and open up some of those scents and smells and tastes that may get lost in the alcohol percentage, where it could come off as just a boozy sort of a flavor overall. I'm only going to pour just a little shot or shot and a half, I guess. I'm not really a big guy that measures out shots. So that's probably all I'm going to need from some whiskey. Now, 40% should exhibit some legs regardless of what style of the whiskey it is. I don't think Jameson is a single malt which just uses one type of a malt. I think it's a blend of different kind of malts and grains. And I've never reviewed a whiskey before, so I'm going to try to use my intuition on how to review a whiskey from my experiences with craft beer. But as you can see, I don't know if you can even see that. Probably see a little bit of those legs running down the glass. And if I hold it up kind of like a wine, you can see it's not a heavy percentage. It's not so dark around the arch of the liquid. And it definitely has, if I look at it in the light properly, it's definitely got a nice golden, almost like a copperish kind of a tint to it. I don't see a lot of proteins or any kind of, well, yeah, there is a little bit of the fine white particles. Not sure what, I mean, they do distill it 3 times, but I don't know what their filtration system is. But I'm going to give you a nose of the Jameson whiskey, Caskmates, Stout Edition aged in craft beer barrels. And immediately I do get a sharp alcohol nose and a presence to it. But I am getting a fudgy chocolatey kind of a nose. Maybe some floral notes, some herbal presence to it. Again, it's got a lot of the 40% up front until I add the ice. It's almost like a chocolate cake or a flourless chocolate cake, or that kind of a thing, or even a cupcake. It's got the sweet bready malty notes. And maybe some toffee or butterscotch, but it's primarily got that fudgy kind of a chocolate note to the scent of it. So I am going to take a sip of the Jameson Irish Whiskey Caskmates. Cheers, Salante, whatever they say in Ireland. It really, I mean, it's whiskey, so I got a little bit of a dinner on me, pasta sauce. It does have that 40% sort of a burn when it goes down farther, but it's I would say more than anything, it's got a warming sensation to that 40%. I mean, it's pretty low for a whiskey, unless it's like a Fireball flavored whiskeys. Those tend to be a little bit less in percentage. I mean, overall, I'd say for what I've had between some bourbons and even a few scotches here and there, I'd say this is on the light side of medium in its mouthfeel right now. I can get its malt and its grain, sort of a bready flavor to it without the ice. There is an unsweetened kind of a baker's chocolate, that floury, sort of a baking note to it without the ice in it. got a little bit of an herbal spiced note. I don't know if I detect a slight hint of hops, but you never know if that can provide a little bit of its herbal note. I don't have the complex palate to describe every single flavor like this guy Ralphie does that does whiskey reviews in Scotland. Not me yet. And it's also got even a touch of the smoky note from the kind of an oak barrel flavor, even in the scent. But yeah, there's definitely an underlining malty woody presence from that oak barrel. There's totally an oak barrel presence to that. And I'm glad that they put it in a stout barrel for that. I'm going to add 2 ice cubes. And from what I've seen people do, sort of want to swirl the glass, and some people will even, put their hand over it, put someone over it to keep and trap those aromas and the flavors into the whiskey. I'm not that crazy yet about whiskey to do it that way. I just know that I find it's a little bit easier to drink certain whiskeys when they are a little bit cooler, because I guess Americans like a cold beverage, I guess. All right, I think it's chilled somewhat. With the ice cubes in the whiskey, let us get a new nose on that. I would say that I'm still getting that cakey chocolate, baker's floury chocolate cake kind of an essence to it, but not as pronounced as before the ice was put into it. And the alcohol definitely doesn't smell as sharp in the nose, not as spicy. And there's a good woody presence to that oak in the background. And you can get that malty, grainy sort of a smell out of it. And the floral notes to me are subdued somewhat, but let's see how it tastes on camera with the ice cubes. Cheers, Celente ice cubed. And that definitely does not have the boozy upfront kick that it did without the ice, which is what I'm preferring out of the Jameson here. Towards the end, there's a slightly spicy sour type finish. A little bit of warming from the alcohol right there. I'm still getting a little bit of that sort of underlining toffee note. There's definitely those chocolatey notes. It's not like a bam, bam, bam chocolatey note like it tastes like a Young's double chocolate stout kind of a deal, or chocolate milk. Nothing like that. It's definitely still retaining that chocolatey thing, like I said, and it's got a little bit of a butterscotch coming out in its flavor. There may be a little bit of an herbally spiced note. Again, not sure if that comes from hops or whatnot. But what is my overall impressions as far as the Jameson Caskmates is concerned? Again, I'm not really too sure on all the whiskey kind of lingo and terminology. I just kind of know so far over the last maybe year or two of actually starting to get into whiskeys what I kind of like and what I don't. And for all of you that do not know, they have the Jameson Black Label, a gold reserve, which is, by the way, it's a triple distilled blend of pot, still, and grain whiskeys. The Black Barrel is twice charred for good measure. Black Barrel is triple distilled with a blend of rich pot, still, and grain whiskey that's matured in sherry cask and bourbon barrels. So that sounds pretty interesting. They also have a 12-year-old version of the Jameson Original, an 18-year-old limited edition, and Jameson Rarest Vintage Reserve, which sounds really good. Not exactly sure what that is. It says a combination meticulously chosen grain whiskey and port pipe matured pot still whiskey. That sounds damn delicious. So, since everybody knows, I think, kind of the idea of Jameson, or has had that before on St. Patrick's Day, or has had a Jameson and ginger, whatever, I think that the Jameson Caskmate, I'm going to have one more ice cube. I think the Jameson Caskmate is a step up in flavors and in sophistication. I think this would be a nice one to try if you've never had whiskeys before and you're sort of apprehensive on wanting to try that, especially as a craft beer guy. I am getting some of the, it's not a slap in the face, you know, big old stout beer flavors. You can get a woody, slightly charred note, slightly charred, not as bad as a peated Scotch whiskey that just smells like a campfire. And there are subtleties to the chocolate notes once you put water or ice into it. I mean, but overall, it's a pretty easy drinking experience. And I would say if you like Jameson, then this is a product to try. I would think it's a lot better to just have it plain on its own instead of in a mixed cocktail. I'd have to look right now, and I can do that, but I'm not sure what this actually cost, what this would cost you in the United States. This particular bottle did happen to make its way from the airport in Dublin, Ireland. My parents went to Dublin, Ireland, and saw this bottle of whiskey and thought it looked like it would be interesting, and then turned out that, you know, they got it in the United States. But if I look, you know, my local area at a store's website that I know sells a bottle of the Jameson Caskmates, I can tell you that in my local area, a bottle of the Jameson Caskmates would, for the 750 milliliter bottle, which they're calling it the 1 liter bottle from Ireland, metric system stuff here. A 750 milliliter bottle of the Caskmate Stout Edition is going to cost you $34.99. Now, actually, I take that back. This is not the 750 milliliter bottle. This is actually a full 1 liter bottle. So again, for the 750 milliliter bottle, you're going to get around $34.99, at least in Southern Massachusetts. And for the Stout Edition 1 liter bottle, like I have, it's $39.99. So it's not going to cost you an arm and a leg. It's a pretty tame but enjoyable experience of a whiskey. If you've never had it, it's a great one to pull out at St. Patrick's Day. I know it's June, not even close to St. Patty's Day. But if you want another really good Irish whiskey that I've had, I've only had a few different kinds. I would definitely. Oh, and I can't even remember the name of it right now. I'm gonna look this thing up. But there's another one that I would totally recommend as far as the Irish whiskeys are concerned, and that Irish whiskey is called. I wish I had the name of this, and I apologize that I don't. Is the Teeling Irish Whiskey Small Batch. 750 milliliter bottle will charge you $34.99. And some people would argue that when it comes to Irish whiskeys, the traditional way of doing it in the pot stills lends itself to being a rather not flavorless, but rather it's just this kind of doesn't have a lot of complexity. It's kind of rather bland in the mouthfeel, and it's almost intended for, an international consumption that doesn't really drink a whole bunch of Irish whiskey. But Teeling actually finishes their whiskeys in rum casks, I think for like 6 months or something. And that's really cool that they do that. They use rum casks, rum barrels, and it's 46% alcohol by volume. And they've gone back to a smaller batch style from just using the copper stills, which is really cool that they do that. That's a little bit closer of a approximation to what Irish whiskey is generally all about. But the Jameson, I'm not really in love with the Jameson Caskmates here. I don't really dislike the Jameson Caskmates. I would definitely say it's cheap enough, even in a liter bottle, to give it a try and see it for yourself. So I'm going to give that at least a 1 thumb up for me on the Jameson Caskmates whiskey. And until next time, keep tasting, nosing, and sipping those fine, malty, grainy beverages. Cheers. We'll see you soon.